Horizon Zero Dawn is probably one of my all-time favorite games, and to hear back in June of 2020 that the next title in the series was coming out in the next couple of years, I was a little excited to say the least. I would have been pretty contemptuous with Horizon Forbidden West being pretty much the same game as Zero Dawn, but just a continuation of the story. But I'm glad they've done so much more.
I'm running out of time, Elizabeth. The land is dying. People are suffering. Soon, they'll starve. All because of a terraforming system that's spiraling out of control. And only I can fix it. Only I have your genetic code. It won't be long before we hit the point of no return. And then... extinction.
With a much bigger budget to play with, developers Guerrilla Games pulled no punches with Horizon Forbidden West. Their visuals are even more breathtaking than the original games. There is more scale, more grandeur, superb environmental and character designs. I can't tell you how many times my jaw just dropped in amazement. Obviously it didn't literally drop, but I found myself constantly saying, wow, that looks good, or damn, that looks cool. But it's not just the visuals that stepped up, but also the world design. Forbidden West maintained the elements that made Zero Dawn's open world superb to explore, and iterated and improved upon it. The world is richer with things to do and see. I kinda wish I had more time to play it. Not to mention the combat has been fleshed out to provide a lot more definition in playstyles. You can truly approach the combat in a manner of different ways. And while the story is just another step up, it's a change from the internal struggle Aloy had in the first game to now a struggle between friends, accepting that Aloy cannot do it alone. Horizon Forbidden West is a superb game, and probably one of the best sequels to a game I've ever played. Forbidden West is probably one of the best looking games I've ever played, and you'd hope so. As a newly released title to the next generation console, I'm happy to say that does most certainly deserve the title of being next gen. The world is overflowing with details where other games would save this level of detail for inside and internal environments. Forbidden West uses that level of detail just out in the open world. From basic clutters to the placing of dead machines out in the world, you really get that sense that the world lives without your existence in it. I personally think it adds so much to the world's liveliness, the world's believability. It's never overdone. And that's not to mention that this game uses its world as a physical skybox. A lot of the places, buildings, and mountains you can see off in the distance are actually reachable. The environments are always gorgeous. I was constantly left in awe of how beautiful this game looked all the time. I'd often just spend time standing there, taking in the beautiful world. I'm also amazed by the styles, colours, and just unique designs that each of the tribes and characters have. They are all unique in style and distinguishable, while also being grounded in similarity. You can tell where a character comes from, simply by their clothes. I found myself consistently changing armor throughout the game, simply for the visual appearance, as opposed to the actual functional benefits I got from using a certain armor set. Because stats don't matter when you follow the rule of cool. And speaking of cool, I mean, the machines just stepped it up another level entirely. It's like they saw the response they got to the machine designs in the previous game and said, hold my beer. The designs of the elephant, the freaking sunwing. The child within me is drooling at all these dope-ass mecha dinosaurs. It's just an overload of pure style. For the most part, the game looks absolutely amazing on the PS5. How a $500 console can run a game that looks this good is amazing to me. Whether you prefer 4K 30fps or standard 60fps, the game runs pretty smoothly at all times. There were, however, a couple of pop-in issues I had where when traversing the world, objects in the distance would just pop in, or the change from low texture quality to high texture quality was pretty noticeable. But for the most part, it was something that rarely happened. The game, at least in my playthrough, never dropped frames once. It generally ran extremely smoothly. Of course, credit goes to the PS5 hardware, but also the credit is mainly down to Guerrilla Games' commitment to making the game run so well, especially given the details and quality of everything in the environment. While the visual design of the world was rich with detail wherever the eyes gazed, the world itself was overloaded with things to do and places to explore. So much so it's a little overwhelming at first. But that feeling of being overwhelmed quickly fades into a feeling of excitement for all the possibilities the world presents. So much content is packed into such a tight area that everywhere you travel there is something to distract you from your goal. I constantly told myself, let's get more main story missions done, but continuously found myself sidetracked with side content. Often in my travels I'd be on my way to an objective, then spot something off in the distance and want to go explore. Or I'm riding past a herd of machines to then remember I need a specific part from the machines for an upgrade. I was just getting distracted by everything in my travels, and that's a good thing. A lot of open world games like AC Valhalla and even The Witcher allow for you to simply hop on your mountain, head directly to your next objective or mission with very few distractions. Whereas in Horizon Forbidden West there's almost none of this. There is always something blocking your path, a mountain, a river to cross, a thunderjaw on your path. It's never a direct route from one point to another. It forces you to go different routes to explore the world, and more often than not you get led to something else to explore, leading you to get further sidetracked from the mission you were originally heading to do. Some people might see this as an issue, but I personally like it because it just makes the world feel more lifelike. You get forced into seeing more of the world, and more often than not it's actually beneficial or fun. Of course you can just simply ignore these and ride past, but for me, that's missing what makes this open world so fantastic. I also think it's worth mentioning that the game offers a Breath of the Wild experience where you can turn map markers off entirely and just explore the world based on what cool things interest you on the horizon, pun intended. Nothing to lead your way except your own desire for exploration. There is, however, one minor issue I've had with the exploration in this game, and it's the climbing system. It's, well, the same as it was in the original game, clunky and generally dull to use. Much like the first games, ledges and handholds are typically highlighted in yellow, indicating to the player what is climbable. And more often than not, if they don't have a yellow highlight, you won't be able to climb them. On top of this, Aloy can also climb cliffs, but unlike the yellow indications of what is climbable and what is not, there's actually no indication whatsoever of what the player can climb, unless they use the focus to highlight cliff surfaces that then indicate where the player can climb, which is annoying because a lot of the cliffs look like Aloy can climb them, but simply can't, which is pretty frustrating. But again, this is kind of nitpicking, and while you do utilize the climbing a lot in the game, it's not really that much of an inconvenience once you get over the fact that it's more just there for the gameplay. I'm sure they could have taken a Breath of the Wild's approach with the stamina while climbing objects that aren't intended for climbing, or even an AC treatment where you can just climb everything. But again, it's just a minor issue for just nitpicking at the game. Forbidden West's world is full of lots of side quests that all feel like main story missions. They aren't your typical go there, kill that, then return and complete. The missions are multi-phased, meaning you're often doing a few things like a main story mission would have you do. You might start off by tracking a hunter, then needing to save him from a machine, before then going to assault a nearby bandit camp. The side quests feel like miniature main story quests, and that's really one of the best praises you can give to side content in a video game. That's not to mention that the characters in these side quests are really interesting and unique, which just leads to a lot of really memorable side quests. I also think it's worth mentioning the innovation that is tallnecks. In the original game Zero Dawn, they were essentially the typical Ubisoft tower climb to unlock the map, but instead moved around. Well, in Forbidden West, they improved on this concept even more. All the tallnecks are like miniature side quests, with multiple stages, with each being completely unique from one another or any other tallneck on the map. For example, there is a shutdown tallneck in the ocean. It has 5 stages to it. A scanning phase to identify the problem with the tallneck, a climbing phase to traverse the objects around you, a combat phase to acquire the parts needed, then finally a restoration phase to restore the tallneck, with one more climbing phase to top it off. It feels less like a mandatory chore to unlock the map and more like interesting side content you actually get rewarded for completing. And speaking of the side content, side con in general in this game ranges from battling machines for upgrade material, fighting tribal outposts for loot, clearing cauldrons for overriding more machines, exploring ruins of the old ones for unique rewards, and that's not even including the side quests. There is so much to do and see that despite my best efforts, I simply couldn't help but find myself getting distracted in the open world. Not only this, but NPCs and characters will reference certain actions you take in the world. For example, they'll mention whenever you clear a nearby bandit camp or help save people from machines. It genuinely alters the dialogue that occurs when you interact with people out in the world. It's a nice touch, to say the least, and it makes doing the extra content even more worthwhile. Of course, with all this side content, you're likely to run into a couple of bugs here and there, where quest objectives don't complete or interact, but most of these are fixed with a simple restart or coming back later after completing something else. Again, these are really just common issues you get with most open world games, so the fact that they are here isn't too much of a bother. Of course, I'd rather have none of them, but they're not common enough to become a huge issue. However, it's hard to complain about the world design of this game when there is just so much to do, so much to see and explore. If you're looking for a massive open world rich with things to do, this most certainly is the game for you. Combat in Horizon Forbidden West is best compared to combat in Monster Hunter. You fight to the rhythm of the machine. Unlike most games where you control the fight, you're often led by the machines in Forbidden West. Games like Control or Guardians of the Galaxy, where you go in with a plan or typical approach and repeat the same gameplay throughout your entire playthrough of the game. Horizon Forbidden West is like Monster Hunter. Each and every fight against the machine is led by the machine. Your actions are dictated by the actions of the machine. You can't simply use the same game plan for every single machine. A combination of approaches is necessary. Being able to change and diversify your approach depending on what you're facing is core to the combat loop in this game. Every machine has a wide range of attacks and approaches to killing you, but also a wide range of ways to take it down. There are various weak spots that you can see and shoot off of an enemy, often removing an element of its battle capability. For example, the Thunderjaws have massive missile holders on their back. Shooting them off removes their ability to use those attacks. Each fight is different, down to the unique environments that can be used to your advantage, or simply the lack of environmental tools that means that no two fights play out exactly the same. This is also down to the wide range of attacks each of the enemies have. Using the Thunderjaw as an example again, they have front guns, a laser gun that shoots from its eyes, a tail swing attack, a charge stomp attack, and probably a few more that I can't remember off the top of my head. Not only this, but a lot of the fights with the boss style machines are in places where the spectacle of the fight is blown open. The sheer environmental damage that is caused by the machines makes it a thrilling experience, and I don't think many games can top just how chaotic and epic these fights are. Like in the previous game, there are elemental weaknesses that require you to use specific elements to take down machines, which again diversifies your approach. Not only can you target specific parts of machines, you now have different types of elements to use on the machines, like frost, fire, and poison, just to name a few. It's slightly more punishing than it used to be if you're using the incorrect elements. They're not as effective as when you use the correct elements. But I think this is a good thing. It makes you diversify your weapons and approach to ensure you have enough elemental coverage in your weapons to fight all different sorts of enemies. Unfortunately, melee combat still takes a supporting role to the range combat. Melee combat is a little more stretched out with basic combos, but they're also locked behind a skill tree. I mean, all of these abilities should have been available from the start. These combos are basic, and then the skill tree should have unlocked actual abilities rather than just adding more combo potential. Even with the damage upgrades available, there is almost no point in using melee attacks because they still do no damage. Melee combat is still very much a supporting act to Aloy's ranged arsenal. But while we are on the topic of skill trees, this game has more abilities and even a special ability that can dramatically alter a fight, given your playstyle, for massive AoE damage to adding resistances or even improving the damage of your weapons. You can find a plethora of different abilities and special abilities to help diversify your approach even more. Some of them are extremely broken and might need a little bit of a balance, but others seem a little pointless to use at the same time. But again, based on your playstyle, it will most certainly enhance your experience. Horizon Forbidden West has got probably one of the best combat systems I've played in any third-person RPG. There will of course be no major spoilers to the story, however I'd strongly recommend playing the previous game, as a lot of the story is callbacks or references to the past game events. The characters and the events of the first game are, in my opinion, really important to fully understanding the story and getting the most out of the narrative being told. The first game was all about the individual struggles to discover more about Aloy's past and stop the threat of the world, while Forbidden West is more about Aloy's acceptance that she can't do this on her own. She needs the help of friends and foes alike. It becomes a beautiful story of working with her friends to help stop the incoming threat to the world. The characters are all memorable and distinct, and the game does a really good job at getting you emotionally invested in the narrative and the characters within it. Forbidden West's story does take a bit of a sci-fi angle that I personally like. I think it's unique and different, but I can totally understand a lot of people having issues with the revelation or not enjoying it at all. I personally think it's enough for the time being, but if they start to lean too far into the sci-fi, I feel like the unique setting might suffer as a result. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself talking about future games, but I think that Forbidden West's story is still superb, even with the introduction of sci-fi elements. Given the focus on creating allies and friendships, the story uses a hub or a base to operate out of, where some of your closest allies gather to help you stop the threat of the world. Of course, you can have conversations with them, getting to know them better and understand their struggles and issues, and even aid them if you want to. I personally really clicked with the interactions with friends and people you meet in the world. Having wholesome convos with friends and really getting to know them and what they're going through. I can't tell you the number of times I smiled when talking to Erend, or literally laughing aloud at the bluntness of Cthulhu. My favourite features of this game was seeing how the base grows over time and seeing the characters progress and understand more of what Aloy has had to do alone in the previous game. Horizon Forbidden West is hands down one of the best games I've ever played. I said this about Zero Dawn, and now I'm saying it about the sequel. A game that just builds on everything that made the first title so fantastic. The wonderful and beautiful visual styles of the world. The dense and rich world design ensuring you've always got something to do right around the corner. The combat is a superb blend of spectacle and grandeur. A narrative that changes its focus from Aloy's internal struggles to one of camaraderie and friendship. Horizon Forbidden West is an absolutely must play. Thanks for watching. If you could leave a like if you found this video enjoyable or useful, and let me know your thoughts on the game in the comment section down below.